Race 9 of the match, coming in on port, Emirates Team New Zealand, Starboard, Rossa, Prada, Pirelli. But there's a catch. And the catch is we have the race postponed till 4:30 local time. Fill us in.
Well, the course on course C is set up for the southwest direction, and what we have out there now is a westerly, meaning the wind is too far to the right. We've seen this in some of the round robins before. When the breeze gets round to the right, it comes over North Head, comes over the land, and it doesn't line up with the racecourse area. So Ian Murray out there at the moment is doing his best to slightly adjust the course angle to try and accommodate this wind direction, knowing that at some point this afternoon, the wind's going to come from the southwest. There's a front off the west coast right now. It's roughly anywhere between an hour and 90 minutes away when that's going to hit, and that will then bring the wind to the left. If that comes in faster, we'll get racing underway in this direction. If Ian thinks that's going to take a while, he might rejig this whole course and we'll set up in this sort of west-northwest direction.
He's doing the right thing, first of all. I mean, it'd be easy to say, just shift the course. Well, you can't do it right now. You have these crazy marks. You got boats all over the place. You have this narrow, you're trying to include, the big thing here is you're trying to include all the spectators. You're trying to get them in as close as possible, and then to shift a course after the fact because of a wind direction that wasn't exactly anticipated. Well, it's not, you can't just click your fingers. It doesn't happen in a split second. So they're going to be patient. Remember, they have to get the second race started by 6 o'clock, not finished by 6, but started by 6. So we actually have a reasonable length of time here to play with.
Looking at the wind indicators, look like we've got plenty of breeze out there. So we talk about who this favours, and we're hearing that maybe Rossa. We're looking forward to heading onto course C today, Nathan.
Well, yeah, we're going to find out at this wind strength, 12 knots, a little bit more, and I think both teams are excited to be on course C. It's more of a sailor's race in there. The wind's going to be a little bit shiftier, and both teams have been doing laps around. There's Vasco. He's the team coach. He's a very passionate sailor. Kenny, you've raced against him before, haven't you?
No, a ton, for a long time, and Vasco is very talented in his own right. He really made his name as a tactician on all kinds of boats in the highly regarded TP52 circuit. I think he's been on the world champion boat for 3 years, and just good. It's amazing when a guy of that caliber is actually on the bench and not on the boat. That gives you an idea of the talent pool that these teams have.
The standout about Rossa, Prada, Pirelli as we move deeper into this 2021 edition of the America's Cup match, they're not blinking. They're 2 races down, yet they are still saying, we can win races. There's no sign. You don't see any brittleness anywhere, and that's been a standout feature for me right from the Prada Cup.
Well, this guy said in the lead up to the race here, he said, "There's one thing I've learned from Jimmy Spithill, and I think they've probably learned plenty from each other, but there's one thing I learned, it's never quit." Jimmy Spithill is the definition of never quit if you go back to San Francisco, and yeah, it's nice to have a guy like that around. He brings a voice of experience on actually turning things around.
Let's talk about pressure. So suddenly yesterday, out of the blue, and yes, we get the wind god's smile, let's be blunt, in race 8 on Emirates Team New Zealand. And this smile, the sense of relief we saw on the face of Peter Burling was just purely obvious. Where does the pressure lie now?
Well, for sure, that second race yesterday, the pressure eased right off this team, Emirates Team New Zealand. You could see that all week they haven't smiled. They've been head down, they've been focused, but finally we saw a bit of emotion out of those guys. We saw them, a bit of a smile from Pete and Blair on the water, but also again in the press conference yesterday, and that was the break that they needed. That's the break they felt they needed, and they kind of dodged a bullet yesterday. They made that mistake. They were a long way behind, and Rossa made the mistake and gave the race back to them. I think they'll be very relieved after yesterday.
Team New Zealand didn't want to start yesterday. They were outsailed at the start point. Do you think now that they are 2 races ahead, there's a little bit of less pressure on Burling to get it right, and he will get it right because he's got that buffer?
But I think it's a slight tweak of that. I know where you're going, but I think the tweak is they learned yesterday in that first race, or race number 7, that in this wind strength, there's a potential this boat has jets. And mentally, as a driver, when you think you have an advantage off the starting line, you're not in the mentality that you have to win the start. You can get an even start and just let your boat do its thing.
So Kenny, if you do think you have a little bit more boat speed, which I think Team New Zealand think now when it gets a bit windier. Where are they going to start? Do you want to start to leeward, or do you want to start to windward when it finally happens today?
Good question. That's a good question. I can make an argument for either one while Glenn Ashby's having a cup of coffee, just hanging out on the bow.
I'd love to know what's going through Glenn Ashby's head, because he is such a critical part of that afterguard.
Can we go? Let's go back. Which side would you? I could make an argument for either side. With a faster boat, they like to go low and fast. So get into that buffer zone, that left-hand exclusion zone, as quick as you can, and force the other guy to tack off, or wait for the long port tack. The long port tack is one of the longer legs on the race course, and you'd have a leeward position there and put the hammer down on that one.
Yeah, my take would be, I'd be wanting to start to windward, because if you start to leeward, you've got half the width of the course to convert your advantage. And if you don't then you tack on the boundary, you'll get squeezed out by the competition to leeward. Whereas if they can find a way to get Luna Rossa down to the pin on the line and Peter Burling can start above them, he just has to hold for as long as he can. And then when he tacks onto port, he's got the whole course to put the afterburners on.
Long port tack.
Just updating this, that's our heli 2. Wow, shot of the day. Let's just move on, shall we? Because just reminding you where we are on day 6 of racing as we head towards races 9 and 10. We are in postponement because the wind direction doesn't suit the course right now. Hey, trust us, there's plenty of wind out there. We want to go racing, but the race management committee want to get it right, so we have cool race. So let's, guys, go back to race number 7 and talk us through race 7 and what we saw.
Going through highlights is always really fun for us, because we always pick things up that maybe we didn't see in real live time. One thing that Jimmy Spithill did very well in this race is, first of all, the slingshot move that Nathan talks about all the time, and also keeping a gap. He's got about a quarter boat length gap, but he's also going, I think we saw at the time, it was 4 or 5 knots faster when he just did the slingshot at the last second. And this is also really interesting. He didn't care about where the line is here. Time to put the hammer down and get some pace. I think combined with the fact that Team New Zealand was a little early for the pin, Nathan, it turned into a really nice start for the Italians.
Had many people also ask me, didn't Team New Zealand go over the line there? And it's like, well, they went over the line then, but it's all about being behind the line when the start goes. It doesn't matter if you're over before that, but it's this boat speed difference right now that is huge. And you can see 5 knots extra boat speed. Oh, wouldn't you love that when you cross the start line?
And this new feature we have today is kind of the wing wash feature, but made better. This opaque look behind the boats is actually the breeze that's turbulent coming off of the sails. You see it's really not affecting either at that stage. So really the wing wash was irrelevant.
So for me, this was the critical moment. This was where Emirates Team New Zealand roll straight into attack out of the bottom arc. They use that boat speed as they come firing around, and they split the course here. And this is where, Kenny, you were saying they put the afterburners on. Luna Rossa there, they had 2 options. Either to tack and go with them and keep it tight, but they were never going to be able to tack and put disturbed air on them. It was this moment here where Emirates Team New Zealand started to go faster and faster, and the whole world was starting to see, man, this boat might actually be quicker.
32 knots versus 30. It was 2 or 3 knots faster this whole time. Peter Burling told us after the race that they also got a bit of a right-hand shift, which was kind of a nice break for them as they went around the race course. I don't know, it didn't look like a big right-hand shift to me. It looked like simply a faster boat in this leg. Also remember that this is the race that the Kiwis had a much smaller jib up. And that smaller jib we thought was far more efficient as the breeze started to build. It was almost 1.5 codes away. This is a code 3, and the Italians had a code 1.5 up. They were just faster. They tried what's called a lee bow, right, Nathan? And the lee bow didn't stick for the Italians. They just get pushed to the border, and it's game over at this stage.
Yeah, they had to be further ahead to convert that lee bow, and because they didn't, they ended up sailing in a lot of bad air after that. You know, I guess in hindsight, option would have been maybe to take the duck and keep the race alive a bit longer. When they come back together here, you got a big decision. Either you lee bow and you take the lead and you control the race, but if you tack to leeward right there and they get to that position, Emirates Team New Zealand, the race is pretty much over.
And this is just a stretch. Again, they tried keep it. They talked about keeping the race close at this stage, but whenever they wanted to put the hammer down, look at this, they just stretched. And you know what? The Italians actually have clear air through most of this. Remember, the apparent wind is so far forward on these boats, but there was nothing happening for Luna Rossa at this stage. It was over, and this stretch to the finish, and hey, the Kiwis had something to be pleased about. That was a race with passes, a really interesting, fascinating race.
And the win on that one is around 58 seconds, but the most important thing, it was a win and put them into a 4-3 lead. Currently out on course C, this is the situation. We've heard from race management. They have delayed the start yet again to 4:45 p.m. local time. That's 4:45 local time. They want to get this course as perfect as they can with the conditions to make sure that we have a cracking race number 9 and also race number 10 in this current match. Let's go around and just check what's like up in the air first of all with Neil Hunter. Neil, what can you see from where you are in Heli 1?
Well, right now the breeze is looking pretty right still, and I think it's going to be some real tricky racing if it stays like this. It's going to be properly heads out the boat stuff with lots of pressure and shift differences. I think there's going to be some passing lanes out there for sure, unlike we've seen so much on courses A and E, so it'll be interesting racing.
Nice to hear the phrase passing lanes. Everybody's been asking for passing lanes. We see everybody sitting out on Mangawika North Head. And how cool is that? Look at that. There's the city in the background of the magnificent Sky Tower sitting there.
That could be shot of the day. We always talk about shot of the day.
We always call about shot of the day. That could be our piece of beauty today. Speaking of beauty, let's head down to our very own Shirley Robinson out on Chase Boat 1. Shirley, what are you feeling down there about what's the wind doing?
Well, firstly, we're going to get a better shot than that on Chase Boat 1. Don't you worry. The day is long. Neil is right. The wind is still in the right-hand side. It's at 270, but it has increased. I mean, we just saw a gust of 15 knots. And when we first got out here an hour ago, we were sort of 8 or 9. So a lot more pressure. There's a lot of discussion on both boats about which jib. We saw yesterday how crucial that was. And actually, pretty hard call at the moment. It's up and down. There's a lot of cloud activity as well. I mean, I really think it's going to be quite a complex race course. The highland over North Head, the clouds, the rain, the expectant shift to the left-hand side. So there's going to be lots for the fans to keep us interested, as well as the teams.
You know, Nathan, it's almost like Ian Murray must be trying to decide, can we get a full race off in this right shift before that front line actually goes up over top and it's expected to go back 40, 50, 60 degrees to the left. So it's really a story of whether he has enough time in this right-hand breeze right now to actually pull this off.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing you want to do is set off a race, and then midway through the race it'll be shifting. I've got all my observations on Predict Wind here, looking at them right now, and I can see all the way out to the west coast. It's still in the west direction, so I think we're going to be safe for a little while. Every observation up the harbour, on the harbour bridge, and all the way out to the airport is saying west. So until those start to clock left and go into the southwest direction, Ian Murray's setting up and doing the right thing.
So I think he's trying to set this race course up correctly right now and try to get at least one off in the full westerly.
Confirmation, race 9 of the America's Cup match 2021, timed to go, all things being equal, at 4:45 p.m. local time. It comes on a day where the last race of yesterday had everybody's mouths agape going, what did we just see? Race 8 of the match, just nuts.
Well, this is a race that the sailing world, maybe the sporting world, is going to be talking about for a long, long time, and we all know why. But again, Luna Rossa had a nice little start here. Nathan, Jimmy seems comfortable in these starts right now. There's a gap, but the Kiwis are also early. They can't stay high that long, and they're gonna have to close the gap just because they're early. There it is, they're just climbing right into him, right into the hip of Jimmy Spithill, and sure enough, when it's a left-hand end bias starting line, which means the end of the line is a little favored to Luna Rossa, but then look at this what we call high mode. He puts the blinker on, takes a little bit of a right-hand turn, and forces the Kiwis away immediately. Really impressive. The wing wash isn't really a part of this at this stage. It will be coming up in the future, believe me. But both boats are clear. It's just all about timing at this stage, Nathan.
It's all about timing, and had Emirates Team New Zealand been just two boat lengths further back, that would have been a nice wide right start, but because they're early, they have to run the line here. Yes, they're accelerating. You can see their boat speed grows, but Jimmy Spittle grows at the same time. All that's happened here is the gauge has closed a bit, and that just gives the advantage to the leeward boat. And when he goes into that high mode very quickly off the line, you see the boat speed number start to come down quite quickly here. Emirates Team New Zealand have no other option but to tack and go away to the right-hand side of the course. And when they come back together, it's Italy who are in front.
I would say that this was one of the better legs that Luna Rossa had sailed. We've said that a few times about them, so we're not a broken record. But they played the shifts well. They corralled when they needed to on this leg. They really kind of controlled the race course. And this is, remember, the race after we were blown away by the wind, by the speed of the Kiwis, but it's getting lighter. We had Freddie Carr up in the helicopter. We had Shirley on the water just saying, hey, it's getting really big holes out here. And another factor for Luna Rossa was they had a bigger jib up. The Kiwis, as they admitted at the end of the day, really chose the wrong jib in this race, which makes it even more unique. So, so far, so good for Luna Rossa, but here's one of the big key moments, the jibe. Why don't you take it through this to start, Nathan?
So this was the first big mistake that we saw in the race. They jibe here, and you can see the blue and yellow dotted lines. That's the tracks where they were before. There's a big wind shadow right where those are. And when Team New Zealand jibe there, they just sail right into the bad wind of both boats. And as a result, they fall off the foil here. There's probably 5 knots of breeze there, very turbulent wind. And you can see all the wing wash here. You see the lighter colour here. So Team New Zealand sail through the gas here right now of Luna Rossa. They're going to punch through it. They're going to go straight through it, and they get fresh air again all of a sudden. Look at the speed difference here. They're gaining.
They're roaring into them. Right? You have to, if you're the Kiwis now, though, you have to make a decision. Do we roll them or do we jibe?
And so they jibe, and they jibe straight into the bad air of Luna Rossa. You can see they punch through it just there briefly, but as they come up, that turbulent air is just drifting down the course. Remember, it's only 8 knots in this race. They're effectively in a vacuum where they are right now.
Phenomenal graphics by the virtual eye guys, and it really shows how big the wind, the wind disturbance is from these boats. Incredible on the race course. Now, Nathan and I both looked at each other this morning and we talked about, hey, didn't this happen in San Francisco? Sure enough, same thing. The Kiwis coming into Oracle Team USA. I was there, I was calling it, and it had the same thing. They were coming in so fast, they decided to jibe on this run during race 8. It was race 14. They could have won the America's Cup in this race. Had a jibe right through the bad air, and Glenn Ashby was on that boat, right, Nathan? They jibed through the bad air. They never got back up on the foils, and it was race over. So an amazing coincidence, isn't it?
It's an amazing coincidence. I think a coincidence is all you can really lead into that there.
So we're thinking this race is over, right? The whole world is thinking this race is over. But let's listen to Jimmy Spithill here.
Light out of this, boys. Massive cavitation there, boys, on that one.
17. Crossing and taking off, boys.
Massive cavitation, they said, in that situation, and we saw it was really the most unbelievable sequence.
About 100 meters to clear. You're cool, BMG this whole time.
Yep.
Oh my
God,
I'm selling at 110.
Behind, they have a problem. They can't get the boat up on the foils. They take multiple penalties trying to get back up on the foils by sailing out of bounds. They get 3 penalties at one stage. Sure enough, the Kiwis just sail into the most improbable victory that maybe we've seen. It actually showed a little bit of emotion.
Bit of emotion, that's always a good sign. Positive emotion. It's a big turnaround that race, big turnaround in this event.
Circuit breaker for the match in many ways, and they go 2 clear. The defender Emirates Team New Zealand to lead 5-3. First to 7 will win the 36th edition of the America's Cup. Time to go up to Heli 1. check in with Neil Hunter just to give us an update on what the wind is doing, Neil.
Yeah, to me, the bottom of the course is looking like pretty solid pressure now. I think we've got up to 15 knots at the bottom of the course. As you get up the course, it's definitely just getting shiftier and shiftier with massive patches of less breeze. The jib choice is going to be a tricky one for the teams here, for sure.
Just to note, too, that we are aware that race management, the reason for part of this delay, which we're timed to go at 4:45 local, they're actually shifting the course closer to more the course D area, which is a little closer and more in front of Rangitoto. But it's not stopping fans getting out on their boats and just having a good time.
No, there's a fan.
Man's best friend loves it as well. So while we pause to get towards the start of race number 9 of the match, let us take you back to race 7 yesterday.
Looks like quite a bit bigger jib on the Luna Rossa boat, Nathan, than the Kiwi boat right now. Really one of the only real noticeable differences.
Yeah, that's a really good pickup. It's an indication on maybe one team thinks the wind's going to build a little bit, but again, I still think, look at this start, you know, Team New Zealand here are really trying to put a bit of pressure on them, trying to block the jibe here, or at least thinking about jibing inside here. Let's follow this, see how they go. There you go,
Jumping them and getting back early. Let's listen on board.
Forward out on the breeze. 2, 1, forward. Up, 2, forward. He's still supporting here. No, slow. He's pushing.
Looking like they're above ley line and looking like they're quite early.
24 on pin.
Quite early, and actually being slow there for a second actually was a benefit to the Italians. They got a nice little gap. Hurling's going to have to bear away at some stage.
Can see a big gap between the boats when the start comes. Wide right for Italy here.
Here comes the slingshot move for Spithill.
Both boats over the line right now, having to do a big bear away to get going. It's all about the slingshot here.
Race 7 of the America's Cup match. We're at 3-all. Can anyone make a big move today?
They got tight there, Nathan, right at the end. Burling actually slowed the boat down a bit and got it tight. Is it tight enough to be able to fend off their position as they head towards this for the first time?
Well, it got tight and a little luff starting to come in, but Luna Rossa were over 5 knots faster at their gun, and look at this, they're starting to roll over them. Peter Burling goes for the luff, Jimmy Spithill responds, and now all of a sudden, Jimmy's pressing. You can hear Francesco Bruni saying, press, press, press. Clear win for Luna Rossa in that start.
Really similar starting setup to race 1, Nathan, except it was a flip-flop. It was the other boat. It was the Kiwis starting the race so much quicker than the Italians. This is exact flip-flop, but really similar pattern to race 1.
Well played by Jimmy. I mean, they came back with so much time, more than 2 and 1 on the clock, and really did well to hit that line on time. A good half a knot or 1 knot quicker than the Kiwis. I mean, really well done. And tiny, tiny differences. And what we're seeing now is how that tiny difference just grows and grows and grows.
The Kiwis are keen to engage Luna Rossa in attacking duel, and we know that's a big strength of the Italians, and they've thrown in more tacks in the bottom half of this beat than we've seen previously. I'll be interested to see what the next move is from Emirates Team New Zealand. Have they just got their air clear forwards? This game is changing very quickly from the heli.
And then a match race broke out, you know, just tight. If you're the Italians right now, at least if I were on the Italian boat, I'm thinking that boat behind me is really fast. I'm just going to sit here and block and block and block, and they're going to have to really work to get through me.
I think when we see the meters get inside 50, that's when the danger zone starts to begin for Luna Rossa. Outside of that, they're still comfortable, but at some point up this beat, they've got to tack on their face, and they've got to give them disturbed air. Otherwise, New Zealand are going to keep closing this lead.
Luna Rossa are leading the way, but it's not a huge margin. Look who is right on their hammer. That's Emirates Team New Zealand. As Kenny Reid said, this is a match race.
5, 3, 2, 1. We're coming down.
Racing's often a bit about your turn, my turn. See if Luna Rossa jibe in front or if they continue on here, but without doubt, Luna Rossa are holding their own on this downwind.
They're letting them go, I think, right now because they'll probably try to work the geometry of the race course and go for one and in. They possibly could just do one more maneuver and get into that bottom gate. Let's see if that pans out.
And it was a good downward leg for the Italian challengers. They head on the start of leg number 3 of 6. Not too far behind. In come Emirates Team New Zealand.
Very controlling, very aggressive move by the Italians right there. I didn't see that coming. Forces the Kiwis, even though the Italians lost a little bit of distance there, it forced the Kiwis into a move right away. So they had to get out of the disturbed air of the Italians.
Any right-hand shift right now, Emirates Team New Zealand are back in this race. If they get a nice tack, could be a port starboard situation coming up, and it looks like we've had a lead change, but a lead change isn't confirmed until they make the cross.
More pressure on our left. Yeah, when it attacks, I think we need to protect the left if we can. Yeah, little lighter here, Keiko.
Kiwis on starboard, Stephen. They have the rights.
Hold your breath for just one moment. Match 7. Key moment or not. Hold your breath.
Okay, my runner. Slowly winding up past there.
Crossing.
Lot faster, us team. Happy to gauge up a little, take some gauge now, just for the safety. Already high.
It's a big moment in this race. If Team New Zealand can hold to the boundary here, they're going to convert this into a pass, and it'll be our first pass of the America's Cup.
I think it's an easy pass right now.
Get the speed, we start trimming up on high mode here.
They're faster, they're faster.
3, got to tack behind, 4 down. Here we go. May get a hook here.
Fast mod, yeah.
Normal mode, might get a hook.
Yeah.
Deputy's good.
And there you have it, folks. A lead change.
Don't blink. It happened.
And everybody says you can't pass in the America's Cup in these 75-footers.
You bet that crowd's happy.
The bottom line, Nathan, is we saw it on the first beat, and we've seen it again. That Kiwi boat is ripping upwind. It is going really fast. We have not seen these speed advantages to either boat yet. This is big.
Yours cover.
Closing in on the halfway stage of race 7. And for the first time in this race, Emirates Team New Zealand lead Luna Rossa around the top mark.
One ahead.
The Kiwis are smoking right now.
2, 1.
There were all those pre-race rumors, all the whispering of 3 and 4 knot speed differences at time. You know what? We've seen 3 or 4 knot speed differences this race, which is incredible to me, actually.
Leg number 4 of this 7th race in the match 2021 out on course E on the Hauraki Gulf. Swinging around like a go-kart, you might say. And they head up on that upwind leg. And suddenly the New Zealand flags fly high on the America's Cup village.
Happy 0.
Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli go around 29 seconds adrift. That was I'm still stunned. We've seen the first lead change in a race.
Turning. Coming up now. Port's going down.
This is the boat speed that people have been talking about from Team New Zealand for a long time, and now it's just over that threshold. The speed is there, and they've got the angle back there on the breeze, and they're going same angle, but 3 knots faster.
3, 2, 1.
Emirates Team New Zealand are rounding the top gate for the last time in this 7th race of the America's Cup with a sizable lead on Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli. Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, they'll be thinking about why and what went wrong in this race. They strong start by anyone's stretch of the imagination, and they nailed it. Emirates Team New Zealand in a match that featured the first pass of the match win race number 7, and they take a lead. They go up 4-3 when it matters. But now it's time for race number 9. Emirates Team New Zealand at Luna Rossa. Prada Pirelli will come in on starboard, and Emirates Team New Zealand will come in on board. Time to go at 4:45 local time. Wind strengths feel good. An adjustment to the course, and the teams look like they're getting set
This
for...
is the race committee. The wind sampling is complete, and this race is live.
And just like that,
yeah,
race
baby,
committee come in and say, yeah, let's do this. Slight change to the course, though.
Yeah, much more right-hand course. Surely this is going to be fascinating, the jib choice. It looks almost like the two matched each other because it is puffy out there, isn't it?
I think they're both on the J3, so a smaller sort of mid-range jib. It's really puffy. We're sitting on the bottom right-hand corner, which I think has probably got the maximum breeze. We've seen up to 15. The tricky part of this course is going to be the top marks. They are right under Mount Vic and North Head. I mean, really big hills, 50 meters high, and the wind's going to be all over there.
3 minutes and counting to race start, race 9.
Neil, which side of the race course would you be looking at right now if you were tacticians on one of these boats?
Well, from up here, Kenny, it certainly looks like the bottom left is favourable. I wouldn't want to be getting bounced right early. It looks pretty light and flaky.
Not sure we like hearing light and flaky.
Yeah, but this is a sailor's race. This is actually, this is what most sailors love.
I think it's the first time we've had a good 15-knot wind to get a race underway, and that's just got everybody's salivating for some speed today. 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Emirates Team New Zealand are allowed in on port entry. And the key here starts. Can they gazump Jimmy Spittle and Francesco Bruni in the start and get one away cleanly? And in the lead. So in come Emirates Team New Zealand. Out on the right-hand side, you can see coming in your screen will be Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli on starboard.
Nathan, I'm fascinated to see with a little bit of pressure if these guys change up this kind of reasonably predictable format that they've been dancing around with in the pre-starts.
Yeah, Kenny, with a bit more breeze, this starting box is going to feel a lot smaller, so I expect the boats to go a little bit higher in the box, go up nice and high, and then bear away and approach it, because they're going to go out of bounds otherwise. And there you have it. They're already sailing high and almost at the boundary with 1:30 to go.
Probably we'll check around here, boys.
Matching your angle there,
He will be early. We'll be taking around, boys.
He's going to go behind it. Sorry, a little bit. Turning up on the breeze here, boys. Yep. Hard up now, hard up, yep. Okay, he's backing. And board up in 2, 1, board up.
So both boats pretty early coming back. You can hear the comms off the boats.
Especially they were going 46 knots reaching across there right now. Making up a little bit of ground is not going to be hard to do. Here we go. Here comes the push.
You got us. Yep.
Let's get him off line line. Boards down. 2.
Mine in 2. Mine in 2 here. There's your boat firing. Get ready, Joshy. Boat lay.
Let's just check the light line.
He's fired up still.
I think he cannot shut.
All this dance is trying to kill speed. They're still quite early to the line. Still trying to keep that gap between the boats.
He cannot shut.
Take off okay in this, but still 7 on pin.
New Zealand very early, both boards down. Luna Rossa looking safe. They're not going to get shut out. Let's just follow this chat all the way in.
New Zealand almost off the foils completely. They got to be worried about getting back up in the air here.
Happy to take off? Yep.
Here we go.
Easy.
Gonna be second.
He will be slow.
Away.
All over.
Right here.
All the way.
He's 3 boat lane, come on, you
We have a start in race 9 of the America's Cup match. Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli, Emirates Team New Zealand, and this is a big race.
Nathan, Burling did a little better job of turning the boat up onto the wind. It almost looked like Luna Rossa skidded a little bit going into that, but they do have a nice gap. But can they hold this distance off of the boat to leeward in order to set up for, like we talked about before, that long port tack coming up?
Very even start. As you say, it's all about the exit of this boundary and how the boats shape up. Let's just hear the chat as they approach the boundary.
He's working hard a little bit.
Trimming up a little. Just off.
Little lefty coming in.
Okay, good there.
10 probably. Pressing up off.
Can Luna Rossa make a lead out stick when the two boats tack?
We'll tell you when it's one. Build coming down. Turning. Maybe hard. Forward. Yours cover. That's your angle.
This is going to be touch and go all the way across for both boats.
One boat length, 1.5 separation.
It's all about mode choices between the two boats. Who's the faster boat? Is New Zealand being affected right now by the bad air? It doesn't look like it, so it's a full boat speed race still here.
There you go, below that obviously. Yeah. It's going to be lefty coming in, pushing up a little bit, closing gauge. Okay, coming up, working hard a little here.
And a small beacon in the middle of the race course that they have to dodge. Goodness.
Okay, good angle there.
We are both into high modes.
He's going forward, pretty big knock on us.
Keep working the high mode here.
High mode by Prada. We know they love this high mode, Nathan.
30 maybe.
Yeah, he's working.
He could that. Yeah. Okay, coming up another 5. Okay, that's magic angle. Okay,
Luna Rossa really wanting to force Team New Zealand to tacky. Team New Zealand want to hang to the boundary and do the same back to them on the next tack. It's the hardest it's been in a long time.
Pressure here. Yeah, the moment it is working.
Any meter you lose right now is a massive meter.
Okay, good. This is good for us.
Lead change. Small one, but it's a lead change on the first leg of race 9.
Forcing the highest we can.
Yes.
There we go. Luna Rossa uses that high mode, Nathan, to get rid of the competitor. Really well done, because that was incredibly touch and go.
And you can see Luna Rossa coming to the boundary in this red line here on the bottom of the screen. That's the ley line. If they can make it in one, they can minimise attack. Could be a big gain for Luna Rossa if they make it in one.
And keep starboard tack advantage.
Trav.
Yeah, cross it.
Good puff coming on. 2, 1. Staying a little high build to get it. Okay, now we go.
Yeah, good pressure on our left, on our right.
Got to do a little high mode here, boys.
Moments. That was literally breathtaking. That long port tack. Luna Rossa in command for the moment, but boy, is this is less than a one mistake.
Yeah, left marker looks good for
between
pressure
the
as
two
well.
boats, amazing.
Potential split at the top mark here. I heard Francesco Brini say left mark looks good for breeze. Good chance of a split at the top here with boats approaching on different tacks.
You may have a piece on the left mark on us.
Now, here comes a situation where the boat coming from the top of the screen, the Kiwis, if they want to take the left-hand mark, they could potentially get into that circle. Doesn't look like they can get there.
Coming up. Okay, good. Sorry. Eyes on the mark.
Top mark for the first time. It is all on in race 9. Splitting the marks, and away they go.
Yeah, you see that we don't
There is nothing in this critical race 9 of the America's Cup.
Big lefty.
Yeah.
All the way. Stand by, John. Yeah. 3.
Little longer.
Little one here, little puff.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Pull down.
Maybe even 0 feet real. Maybe to push it a little faster.
Surely, we got 2 even boats out there right now. Which side of the race course would you be on if you had one of the wheels?
Really good pressure.
So to leeward,
We're
not so
on the
much.
side, we're right beside the Kiwis, following them down, and I like it here. There's like big puffs of wind coming down through that gap in the high land, and to me it looks good on this side.
Gotcha there.
Up to Neil. Neil, what are you thinking? Do you agree with Shirley? Do you like the side of the course the Kiwis are on right now?
Yeah, absolutely, Kenny. I totally agree with Shirley. They just seemed to get massive gusts there when we're marking really soaked down in it, which was quite impressive.
Starboard tack by the Kiwis. It looks like Luna Rossa is ducking behind. We have another pass.
Hold it down, boys.
Yeah.
7, right?
So if the breeze is stronger on that side of the track, it should be Luna Rossa's turn to benefit from the better breeze. 45 metres in it, you can see they're gaining again slowly. It's going to be about jibe execution. If Team New Zealand can make this next cross, then you could say they've converted that lead, and then they're going to benefit again from that side that has more pressure.
He won't be on ley line, so...
Yeah, this side, probably we have 20 seconds on the other side and then it gets lighter.
A lot more conversation off the boats today, isn't there?
No question, shifty conditions tend to do that. Puffy, shifty conditions kind of force more communication.
Hi, Trav. Hi, Rudder, sorry. Nice little puff here.
Goodness gracious. Literally nothing in it. One little puff away, Shirley. One little puff away.
Course C, why aren't we here all the time?
We've seen it, how great it was through the round robin series and the Christmas Cup. Starboard tack now, advantage for the Italians.
Behind him at the stage.
Question is anyone on ley line at the moment?
Board down.
A big call jibing on Luna Rossa here.
No problem with him.
Yeah, no worries.
A big call by Luna Rossa. Jibes to stay in sync, so they're really setting up the lure gate, aren't they, Nathan?
They are. Watch for both boats to jibe here in a second.
Yeah, I think we lock him. I think we go all the way. Go all the way, boys.
Going to sail him off the course. They have every right to sail him off the course right now.
Straight.
It's going to be a jibe round up if we go, okay? It's going to be a jibe round up, okay? Jibe round up,
Aggressive match racing by Luna Rossa. Sailed right off the course there.
Creating a really tight turn for both boats.
There is nothing in this ninth race. Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli lead Emirates Team New Zealand. And they head up for the leg number 3. And this is really a battle on the water today.
Jimmy Spithill at his best in that really tight match racing situation, coming into that lured gate, forcing a tiny lead into a 100-meter lead with just a really aggressive match racing move.
Some happy Italian fans in the village at the moment, isn't there?
Nice breeze straight. Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Puff out of this.
Peter's holding their breath. It's interesting, Peter decided to go straight into attack there. It wasn't a great attack, and I think they gave up another 50 metres. But they got the split, so any right-hand shift and those metres, that 200-metre lead could start trickling down very quickly if we get a right-hand shift. Shirley, you're going up that side of the boundary. What do you see pressure-wise and boat speed-wise between the boats?
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, Nathan, we're on the right-hand side beside the Kiwis. I mean, I like the breeze on the right-hand side. It's puffing in, but when it puffs, it's stronger. The sky, though, over Auckland's got really dark. So remember, we are expecting a big shift to the left-hand side. And goodness knows when that's going to happen, but it's not far away.
Neil, can you see anything that shows a sign of that big left-hand shift that's anticipated later on in the day?
2, 1. Board down.
Not yet, Kenny. It just looks quite patchy and shifty still, but it was quite impressive sailing from Luna Rossa downwind there, just to force Team New Zealand into a tricky leeward mark move.
One boys, they get on jump, so got 20 to come down. Fine.
Hey boys,
trying to get
on that pressure. Trimming up, yep. Stand by.
Boundary take up,
3,
20 seconds.
2, 1. Board down.
Yeah, working on it.
Good puff out of this.
A little earlier on the cut.
Heading towards the halfway point in this ninth race, but at the completion of leg number 2, it was all go down the bottom mark.
So this was the moment Jimmy Spittle and Francesco Bruni got aggressive and sailed them off the course. You can sail them as far as you want to the boundary. They jibed at the perfect time for their angle to go back to the finishing line. New Zealand had to go further, and what was a very small margin, as you said, Kenny, gapped out to well over 100 metres. You can see here the boat speed differences are quite big. Really nice smooth rounding there by Luna Rossa. Aggressive sailing. And when you feel like you're a little bit slower, you could luff them in this situation. You have to remain aggressive.
The leeward boat, the Italian boat, had the right of way to do exactly that. They had total control of the situation there. They jibed to a comfortable angle and take the lead. But this lead is not growing. The Kiwi boat we have seen is very fast in this condition.
New Zealand here sailed through to leeward. Luna Rossa went to tack on them, and it looked like Team New Zealand's got the bow down. They went through to leeward. They might be gaining on that side, but it's going to be hard to sail around them and get the cross. Remember, when they tack, they're going to be on port tack. So the controlling position here is Luna Rossa, but there's a long way to go to this ley line still. Another 30 seconds to a minute. We could see Team New Zealand sail around the outside here and use the boundary protection. It's not a lead change until they make the cross. On paper, yes, technically, they've got a meter's advantage, but until they actually cross and convert that into a real lead change, we'll just say it's a mathematical lead change.
We are gaining.
In good pressure on the right, or after the tank.
He's coming up a bit. He's building a bit.
Yes.
Build here.
Good there.
All the way across the track, but again, they've done a masterful job of keeping themselves in a good position, really with nothing to spare.
Port down.
And then Simo tacking on the port lane onto the top half. New Zealand's chance here is to accelerate and get a hook here, but right now they are sailing in the bad wind of the other boat. Have to go below that channel marker. It doesn't even look like both boats are laying. It still could be one more tack and left turn for both boats up here.
Yes, copy.
There's the wing wash behind the two boats. You see the New Zealand boat went from dead behind the Italian boat down to the left to try to stay out of their bad air. You see the bad air, the disturbed air coming off the sail plan of the Italian boat. You've got to position yourself to stay away from that.
Yeah, going 5, Pietro. 3, 2, 1, more down. Turning.
We are at the halfway mark in the 9th race of this America's Cup match. Out on the Waitemata Harbour, it is a battle royale. Luna Rossa Prada Cup will lead Emirates Team New Zealand around the top.
It's going to be a little soft here.
Downwind on leg number 4.
Soft here.
Do the trick.
Go straight for a bit. Quick chair, boys, send it.
Stand by.
Got to get above his line.
You hear the Kiwis talking about getting above his line again. It's because of the disturbed air coming off the back of the Italian boat.
Neil in the helicopter, this is a perfect moment to go to you. What do you see for pressure down wind here? Both boats are saying it's soft at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think Luna Rossa are doing an awesome job of picking the intersection to pick up that breeze through the middle on the right, to be honest. And yeah, they've kind of joined in a similar position that they did in the last time. Went really well.
That's good there.
He's another 5 lower.
We're in the pressure.
3 boat lengths downwind of her.
Making small gains here.
275.
Both boats perfectly clear of the other boats' disturbed air, but they always got to keep it in mind. We've seen that too many times during this event so far, how different the disturbed air is in these new modern boats that are going 3 or 4 times the actual speed of the wind.
We're going to go, you go.
Maybe have a look.
Stephen, a little more breeze, a little shiftier conditions. Frankly, this is what the America's Cup is about. This is an America's Cup race right now.
I know I'm sitting on the edge of my seat because this is anyone's race. Everybody else watching us around the world will be in the same mode.
More down, I think. What? They will be in the dirt. They should be in the dirt now.
Pressure is coming.
You hear Francesco Bruni saying they should be in the dirt. See how Team New Zealand have jived into the bad air of Luna Rossa. The only way they can actually gain here is to sail a high mode. The gas is actually coming out behind. In a typical boat, it would be out the front of the boat. But because these boats are doing, what, 39 knots downwind and 12, 14 knots of breeze, the gas almost comes straight off the back. And you can see Team New Zealand having to set extra distance because they can't catch them. This is all about bottom arc approach, and the conversation on board now is going to be critical to see if Team New Zealand can get a split.
Copy.
A little one,
Okay,
get
easy.
2, 1, put down.
Get this pressure.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
That's it, finish. Yep. Good.
Team New Zealand make a move and take a split.
One in left. One in left.
One on the left because we're getting a big punt there.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Also, we are on the left here. So we have lefty then after the round. Good.
Still long way to go to the bottom, eh?
258, 250 is the first lefty, big lefty we see.
Yeah.
Pietro Sabello, really the voice of reason there.
10 seconds.
Keeping his eye on the wind and on the probably on all the instruments that are displaying the wind direction, wind speed, and he really kind of talked them out of jiving there, didn't he?
He did, and you can see the lead has grown massively, but we've still got one more jibe to go, and New Zealand have set themselves up for a split here.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
No, slower feet. Good.
Little gain to him. May have a piece of us for the left.
Feet jives inside us.
Yeah, I think we have to go right, boys.
Ooh, big gains here for Team New Zealand, a bit of action at the bottom mark.
Easy, fast mode.
More action at the bottom mark, but it will be Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli that rounds gate 4 first. Emirates Team New Zealand, both of them steaming in at plus 40 knots. In your words, Kenny, we got a race.
We got a boat race here, no question about that. This is what we've all been waiting for, frankly.
Okay, so the next moment is the first shift. Shirley, when you see the wind right now, which side has got the first shift when they come back together?
How faster,
Well, that's a big question. We're on the right-hand side, and there's good pressure, but generally it has dropped. You know, Nathan, I spoke to Vasco Viscotti this morning, and he said we just have to nail Team New Zealand. We know they're lower and faster, and I'm worried now that perhaps that was a bit of a mistake. They've given them an open road to just use that pace. They're coming back together now. Let's see what happens.
Trimming up.
It is going to be close. Keep in mind the Italians are on starboard tack. They're a right-away boat, but that is a lot of distance to give to that Kiwi boat.
I think it's just the cross. We're not crossing poorly bound, either one. Yeah, we're behind.
I don't think so at the moment.
No more breeze.
If we do, we protect the right.
All good,
I don't think we have it.
Bit of breeze out here, I think, Pete.
No,
Good angle there.
Cross, boys.
Lighter on that
Performance.
side. Copy, 16 out the front, 2, 1, now. Got him.
Just going to find a good spot to come back up here, Killer.
Yeah.
Mission coming here in 3.
Nathan, they didn't tack on the Italian boat, even though in match racing you would think that would have been a place because they were afraid they'd get rolled. During the tack, the other boats going so fast, they were afraid they couldn't make that tack stick.
And that was a good discussion there between Jimmy Spittle and Francesco Bruni, and ultimately Francesco Bruni said we don't have enough of a lead to make this stick. If they tack there, they're very vulnerable to New Zealand either going above or below them. So now they're splitting, and it's in the weather gods right now. Is it going to be a left shift or a right shift or more breeze on one side?
Neil, you're the weather god up there. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, to me right now it's all about the right. I think it's Team New Zealand really heading that way. I think if I was Luna Rossa right now, I'd be a little bit concerned with Team New Zealand on sailing their own mode to the right.
So Neil's calling a lead change at this next exchange. Big call, Neil.
The new guy called the lead change.
Got a just ahead of crosswind. Got you just crossing right now.
Check the pressure
So
here in front.
big
Jimmy
focus on the
Spittle being to
performance
Lord
here.
flying the boat, he's going to make the decision this time as to what they're going to do.
They've done a nice job of transferring that decision-making back and forth. Man, is this a close race.
Three. Well, you're soft cover.
We're too close.
Yep.
Little
Copy.
wide.
2, 1, more down. Turning.
Attack. 2, 1. Four coming down. Turning.
So that time they were far enough ahead to make the attack, and they pushed him back to the right.
Trimming up.
They
Trimming up,
gained
boys.
on the
Trimming up.
left despite
Mine so
Neil
wide.
thinking the breeze is better on the right. Neil, now what do you see?
I'm still seeing all pressures on the right to me up here, Nathan. It'll be interesting to see how they go when they come back together.
Pressure. You think so?
Let's listen to the chat on board
Just going to
as they
find something to
progress
get
to the
back. There's one in the middle
final.
here near
It
this
is
mark killer.
interesting they're protecting the left side of the course, though. This is their choice on the Italian boat.
And it's a port tack when they come back together.
Yep.
They lose right
Let's go a
away.
little further here.
Surprising.
15.
He's going to have to take this killer, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh.
Here.
1. Four coming down.
Let's go all the way just in case we lay a little build. Stand by. 3, 2, 1. Pull it down.
Right up.
Nice smooth tack. The real question is, has the breeze, look at that, there's a right-hand shift and it looks like Team New Zealand have taken the lead.
They made the choice. The Italians made the choice to go back to the left side. They had the right side if they wanted it. They made the choice to go back left. It doesn't look like that worked.
Pressure here. 9 right.
Emirates Team New Zealand heading towards the top gate for the last time in race 9. They made the right call, got the right-hand shift, and look at this. They will lead Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli around the top gate and head home in front. But there's still a long way to go.
3, 2, 1.
Devastating for the Italians. A devastating call. They sailed such a beautiful race up until that moment. Just that choice in the shifty conditions of course seed. Just fantastic.
And Luna Rossa now are the chaser, and they're 18 seconds in the deficit. Can you believe what we've just seen?
Just a great race, first of all. A great thing for the sport of sailing. Surely this is exactly what the America's Cup is supposed to be all about. Pressure, hard sailing in tough conditions.
It's pretty exciting, isn't it? I mean, it's great. What a great racetrack this is. This was Grant Dalton's vision when they won the Cup in Bermuda, that it would be here on this racetrack, surrounded by fans. And boy, it's certainly delivering. It's a tough race course for the sailors. Neither team has a dedicated tactician. We've talked about that a lot, but today you really kind of need one. And I think we saw that a little bit with the Italians. Some difficult decisions there where they let the opposition go, and that's costing them now.
One mistake. That's all I keep thinking.
Did you get the impression hang up on that last leg that Jimmy Spittle knew they might have just made that mistake in his voice?
Oh, absolutely, I heard it in his voice. Because it's the worst feeling in the world. You're on the left side of the course, and all of a sudden you're getting the right shift, and more of a right shift, and more of a right shift. You know you got to tack. There it is. There's how shifty it is. So we're seeing almost 18-degree shifts back and forth on the race course. That's a lot. Even on a narrow race course like this, that is very telling.
Hey, my runner.
What still stands out as we see Emirates Team New Zealand extend their lead is how quickly they have extended their lead. In a race that's been between 180 all the way along for 5 of the 6 legs.
Well, Steve and Luna Rossa were sailing with their elbows out. I asked Francesco Brini in the press conference yesterday, how much wider do your elbows need to be to keep this boat behind you? And he said, as wide as physically possible. And they did a great job in the first 2 laps of really keeping the Team New Zealand boat behind them. And I think they felt that they needed to go on the attack, even though they're in front on that final upwind, to maintain the lead.
Quick question for you. Do you feel that Emirates Team New Zealand, in coming into that 5th leg, they were just being patient? very, very patient and responding without getting their own elbows out.
No, they were. I think they were taking what they were given and making the best of it. That's what the boat behind has to do. And then all of a sudden they got their break, right? They got their break from the Italians. The Italians, believe it or not, everybody says cover, cover, cover when you're ahead. The Italians actually finally covered and got burned by it.
Tierehotai, the boat that they are sailing, Emirates Team New Zealand, have a 465-metre plus lead in this 9th race. And as they head towards the finish in the 9th race, you know what that means. Emirates Team New Zealand are one step closer to winning the America's Cup, the 36th edition. They have done it quite simply on the last leg. Emirates Team New Zealand crossed the line. It's 6-3.
Trying to get up 1 to couple hundred.
That's what that win means to the folks in the American Cup village. Kiwi flags waving, and there'll be again disappointment from Luna Rossa, who right from the get-go were fighting.
Maybe we just drive here.
Yep. Can you believe this? One mistake.
Nathan, that's a tough one to come back from if you're the Italians. We're going to really see what the Italians are made out of now. That is a tough one. So close, so perfect until one
nice work, boys.
Tiny little mistake. Oh my goodness gracious.
Confirmation of the 9th race in the America's Cup match 2021. Emirates Team New Zealand win on the last leg by 30 seconds. So they know the job is almost done. But the way that Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli came out of the gates today, they're going to have to fight even harder if they want to win this America's Cup, because that was a hell of a 5 legs by Luna Rossa.
That was a hell of a 5 legs by Luna Rossa, and they also made some really tight spots stick, which as we all know is really hard to do, consistently hard to do it once. They did it about 5 times. There were touch and go moments about 5 times, and they made it work up until the one big fatal error.
Take a look at some numbers from this 9th race of the America's Cup match. And Nathan, take a look. What do you like about this?
Well, downwind boat speed, 2 knots faster to Emirates Team New Zealand straight off the bat there. Maximum speed, that's not a big one, but the distance sailed again, not so, it's just the downwind speed. They were getting covered the whole way around the first few laps, and that last downwind they got free and they took off.
Key moment has to be the 5th leg.
Here we go. This is all of a sudden the Italians actually tack on top of the Kiwis. They try to give them dirty air. The Kiwis do what you got to do in that position. Really, they have no choice. They have to tack away. It just so happens they tack into about a 15-degree right-hand shift. As Luna Rossa continues all the way to the boundary on the top of the screen, they get lifted, and they get lifted, and they get lifted, and you could tell in Jimmy Spithill's voice, by the time they came back, it was going to be all over, and it sure was. They came back, and it wasn't even close. So really kind of a bad break for the Italians. They had their elbows out, as Nathan said, all along, and their elbows just weren't wide enough when it was all said and done.
It's race 10. Monster race. Port entry, Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli. Starboard entry, Emirates Team New Zealand. To keep you up to date as to where we stand in the match, the scorecard reads this. It's quite simple. Take a look. Defender, Emirates Team New Zealand, 6 wins. Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli, 3. All Emirates Team New Zealand need is 1 more race win, and they win the 36th edition of the America's Cup. So the clock is ticking towards race start. A little under 6 minutes.
Let's go out to Shirley. Shirley, it looks lighter to us right now. Have the conditions changed dramatically, and have we seen that shift, that big left-hand shift yet?
It's for sure, this is going to be a different game. We've got sort of 7, 8, occasionally 9 knots, but definitely a downward trend. I think if we asked Jimmy Spittle now, he'd give us that quote, wouldn't he? Imagine if they lost from here. And this changing conditions might well play into their, into their hands. It's much more, in their conditions. They've put up a slightly bigger jib. The Kiwis have gone for a J2, and the Italians look to have something a little bit bigger. And definitely a changing conditions means, a reset. And yeah, it's going to be good.
Certainly is. Let's go up to Heli 1 with Neil Hunter. Call the course. Which side's going to be better?
Well, as Shirley said, the wind's now down at 9, 10 knots, and it's looking a little left of where it was in the last race. This is going to be a completely different race, there's no doubt about it. But for me, the top right's still looking pretty good. It's eyes out the boat racing for sure, and there's going to be plenty of gains and losses.
2 different types of nerves on 2 different boats. Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli have to win to stay alive. Whereas Emirates Team New Zealand win, game over.
History in the making. It is 2 completely different types of nerves, and you know what? This is what sport's all about, and I'm just anxious to see another great race. That's all I care about in the sporting sailing world. That's all we care about.
Just a reminder that Italy have port entry. They'll come in from the left-hand side of your screen, and Emirates Team New Zealand will come in from the starboard side, which is the right-hand side of the screen as you look at it right now. The crowd is
sitting. This is the race committee. We are postponing the start. The new start time is 17:55.
And just as we say they're getting excited, we have a race postponement till 5:55. That's leaving it close.
Yeah, but we knew this transition was here at the end of the day. We knew it looked to me like there was, in those helicopter shots, there was a lot of breeze starting to funnel out of the harbor.
This is the race committee. We are postponing the start. The new start time is 17:55.
Yeah, they're going to have to hustle to get this race course set up, Nathan, aren't they? See the dark. Neil, let's go to you. The kind of dark patches coming out of the upper left-hand corner of our screen, out of the harbor.
Yeah, absolutely, Kenny. We can see breeze funneling out the harbour around North Head, and I just wonder if North Head's going to come into effect a lot more in this race. We've previously seen that there's been a bit of a wind bend in this direction around North Head, and it's been a bit of a gain feature. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
You could see from that overhead shot that the wind's now almost left of North Head. That's that left shift, that southwest direction that has been sitting there and threatening to come. It's come through the west coast. I've been checking all the observations again on Predict Wind, and you can see all the wind is starting to trend left as it's been dying. That means those 2 red circles at the top of our screen, they're going to have to move those to the left quite a long way, and the funnel's now going to come from Sky Tower. Hopefully North Head doesn't get in the way of this course, and hopefully they can reposition the course quickly, because we need to get a race away before 6 o'clock tonight.
That's right. The rules state if you don't get the race away by 6 o'clock, we come back tomorrow. What a tease. So, confirmation, race start, race 10, 5:55 local time. You can see Blair too going, oh, really? Shrug of the shoulders, okay, bit of a stretch. We'll see what we do. It's
going to be a big call on jibs right now, too, because for sure they have weather boats up there saying, hey, it's blowing 4 knots harder, and they have to figure out a jib call here, because these jibs may be too big for what's coming out of the harbor.
So they'll be talking to their weather team frantically. Well, not frantically. They'll be, the weather team will be aware of this, and
they're under pressure too. You were talking about pressure before. The weather team is as under pressure very often in these races as the sailors.
So, Kenny, how long do you think it takes to get a jib change? Have you had a chat to any of the teams?
About 10 minutes.
So we got 11 minutes to the start. So did they have enough time to make a jib change?
They're not frantically doing anything right now.
No.
But again, they're talking to the weather people for sure. That's a big, big part of the strategy and standing up high, just like Pietro is standing up high. It's eyes out of the boat, like Shirley said, eyes out of the boat weather right now.
So here's our wind speed. This is the last 5-minute average. You can see we are above the minimum limit, only just, but it's sitting between that 5 and 10 knots. But you can see on the screen above that, look at that dark patch of pressure coming across the course. That's the southwest front that's been predicted all day. We've seen it come through Manukau Heads. If you look at the very top left-hand side of the corner, that's the west coast. Very top left-hand side, there's a little dip and you can see the ocean. That's where the wind's now coming from. It's no longer coming over the bridge. It's not coming over North Head. It's a new direction.
Skinny little island. Is that Trinity Hill up in the far distance there?
Not ventured out that way, do you? But as you can see, that breeze is coming across the course.
That dark patch is coming. Can they get those fancy little marks across? Can they nudge those things across fast enough?
So, Ken, when you were sailing America's Cup boats, did you have strategists up the rig?
Always. In light, under 8 knots, we'd have strategists up the rig.
And before the starts, you'd get them up there and looking for pressure and things like that.
A lot of times, starting out in San Diego, we had people in the rig, just the whole race, up by the hounds, and they were almost they were the best tacticians. It would be like having Neil Hunter in the helicopter right now. The higher the view, that view that we just had, we have the perfect view. These guys can't see what we're seeing,
well,
right?
I bet you if they've got our feed, they can see it, can't they?
There you go. We didn't have television on board back in the day. That was before electricity. Back
before electricity. Yeah. That was 20 years ago. I think there was electricity in 2000.
9 minutes and under, or less than 9 minutes now, and counting to race start as this patient crowd at the America's Cup Village wants to see race 10. Luna Rossa fans want to see a race win. Emirates Team New Zealand fans want to see a race win, because if Emirates Team New Zealand pick up the win in race 10, the America's Cup is going nowhere. They have been patient. It hasn't been the best day weather-wise in Auckland as well. It's been a little overcast. There've been the odd shower or two, but it hasn't stopped fans getting out. I was looking at my own, shall we say, social feeds, and a lot of guys were jokingly saying, well, looks like the excuse for work notes coming out for today.
I'm surprised they don't have jibs down, frankly, and because I think this is a pretty big difference coming, but maybe I'm sure their weather people are far more on top of it than I am, and they don't think it's going to be much of an increase in the breeze once it finally settles down to the left.
I'm sure they're looking at all the observations, not just the ones that I can see here on my computer. I'm sure they've got their own observations as well, and I don't see much over 10 knots right now.
It's quite interesting watching them just stand on the tenders, stand on the boats, and looking.
They're looking for the breeze right now.
Just looking.
That's all they're doing right now. That's what a sailor's trained to do. Everybody on board that boat is looking at the pressure and trying to figure out what the situation is going to, and getting yourself mentally prepared for the conditions that are going to be in the next race.
So, Shirley, you're on the water at the moment. You're about the same height off the water as all of the sailors out there. To me, it looks like the sun might be getting a little lower. How difficult is it to see upwind into this westerly breeze?
Well, for sure, Neil has the best view. We're late in the day here, remember, so it is harder to see. I mean, all the guys are having a look. I mean, I think the delay is really the direction, and it's bouncing, it's dancing from side to side. I mean, sometimes it's back at 270. I can see on the Kiwi boat right now they've got 250. Job for Ian Murray, who runs the racing here. He needs to get the axis right on the course. It takes a while to do that, and as you say, the clock is very much running out.
That was a fascinating view as we went across the course. It's just amazing how skinny this island is here, right here, isn't it? And how the West Coast sea breeze and the frontal system, how quickly the things can change around here. An East Coast sea breeze, a West Coast sea breeze, how they meet sometimes. But this is gradient, Nathan, right? This is not sea breeze affected. There's a lot of cloud. It's actually had some showers here today, and this is system. This is Southern Ocean systems. Here we go. Look out. You know, how much time do you spend on the West Coast?
I rarely get across to the West Coast. The West Coast is known for its surfing. I'm a bit more of a sailor than a surfer. There's beaches over there are very rough, but it's not very far at all. From this perspective, you can see there's a lot of water inside the harbour there, and that's why the currents often get quite strong here. But the West Coast is the coast in New Zealand that cops all this bad, strong, cold southwest wind. In summer, you generally don't get affected by it too much. You get days like today, but this harbour is very tricky. Whenever it comes from the west, the harbour gets very tricky to sail in.
Emirates Team New Zealand starting to move.
I'm nervous they can't get this course set up in time, fellas. I have to admit, I think this is just the marks are these big, gorgeous things. They have all kinds of information on them. They have self-anchoring systems, and they're also really slow to move. It's not like an inflatable mark that they can just toss in the boat and sprint off to the side. They actually have to tow them at about 5 knots. So that's actually a bit of an issue as far as resetting the race course.
The tows on for Luna Rossa, Prada, Pirelli. We understand that the top marks are in place, so the clock keeps ticking.
That's a very good sign. Ian Murray's found the correct spot to put the marks, and 4 minutes 30 to go here. It's now or never. We need to get this race going. If we don't get the race going and they push it back one more time, we'll be coming back tomorrow. So sailing fans around the world, stand by. I'm pretty confident this one's going to happen, and we could be in for a cracker of a race.
I think if you're on Luna Rossa, I think light and shifty is exactly what you want.
This is the race committee. We are abandoning for the day. The breeze has gone massively left, and unfortunately we can't relay the course in time.
I hate being right. Doesn't happen often, trust me.
All right, Kenny, I'm just going to scroll right on my weather forecast here. Northeast tomorrow is what it looks like.
What's the wind strength?
At 4 o'clock, we're looking at around 10 to 15 knots.
This is the race committee. Racing has been abandoned for the day.
Can you believe it?
New Zealand, you got to wait one more night, and Italy, time to go regroup. You know, it's that simple. It's the same rhetoric. It's the same exact situation that we've been in as sailors 8 million times in our lives. We just got to, you got to somehow dig it in, the same routine, the same. What are you going to have for dinner? Where, you know, you're going to go out with your buddies.